Hello, everybody. Welcome into SportsDay Insider, presented by the Dallas Morning News. I am Kevin Sherrington, joined by my pals Evan Grant and Tim Cowlishaw, in with us this morning to talk about the Stars. The season's over, but the news never stops. It seems like that, Tim, there's some rumbling out there about the future of the coach of the Stars, who has all he's done is 3 years in a row gotten them to the Western Conference Finals. He has a little trouble getting over that hump. But that's not really the issue here, is it?
Well, no. The issue is in today's world, is it okay to yell at players? Is it okay to bench players? Is it okay to make decisions on the fly, trying to win a game? And it was a controversial decision to pull Jake Oettinger 7 minutes into Game 5. He'd given up 2 goals on 2 shots. I was surprised when I saw it happen. I didn't think it was a bad move. I thought this was a desperate team that needed to do something. There's nothing you can really do to make a team score goals, which was really the bigger problem in that series. But I thought it might light a little bit of a fire under a team that didn't play with much. But instead, now, as it didn't work that night, and as players had their exit interviews with the general manager, it appears the general manager and the owner are going to have to get together and talk about whether it's okay to keep the evil Pete DeBoer around after this. And I kind of see both sides, but for me, first of all, I would keep him. But I think I would argue, if I was in that discussion, that there's a lot of players with a lot of hurt feelings, but part of those feelings are tied up in the fact that they just got beat by Edmonton in 5 games, and there's a lot involved other than just being disappointed in their coach. And over time, those feelings, those raw feelings don't hurt as much, and you realize there's not a lot of really good coaches out there, and Pete DeBoer is a really good coach, and he, as you said, he takes every team to the conference finals. He's been to 8 conference finals since 2011 in New Jersey, San Jose, Vegas, and here. 3 in a row here. Only twice has he gone on to the finals, and he hasn't won a cup yet. But I don't think that means he can't do it. So I do think the things are in place that can still work here. But it's a difficult decision because they think he went a little far, and he didn't. It seemed to be very unapologetic about it 2 days later, saying, no, he hadn't had time to talk to the goalie about it. Well, I think he had time, if you wanted to,
Yeah.
to speak to him. Takes about 5 minutes. But he kind of, he's a little bit more of an old school type coach. And, sometimes those old school coaches in any sport can wear a little thin these days.
Yeah, that's the issue here. I think that the 2 things are, one, obviously pulling the goalie, and apparently he's pretty popular among his teammates. They like him, and he's a connector, from what I understand. And then secondly, the comments after the game, in which he said that Oettinger had lost 6 of his last 7 games against Edmonton in the playoffs, and that was an issue. And then when he came back, like as you said, 2 days later, and then just said, yeah, I hadn't really talked to him about it. It is a different era. I mean, we see Tom Thibodeau getting fired in New York, the Knicks, after, the only time they've been to the conference finals in this century, and he has all the wins, all the playoff wins, I think, that the Knicks have had this century.
Yes, and the Knicks model is one we definitely want to follow.
Yeah, well, that's the
track
thing.
record for success.
Yeah, but in that situation, it is. I don't know that it's so much with him how he gets along with his players. There was kind of a situation there where he just, he wouldn't play his bench. He's just playing his starters all the time, and kind of wore him out there a little bit. Even though that might be a faulty construction of that roster, you can play with somebody else. But as we all know, you can't fire all the players, and if the general manager is getting along with the owner, you're not going to fire him either. So the head coach is going to be the one who takes the fall.
You guys are
Yeah.
you're on both ends of the spectrum here, right? I mean, you talk about the Thibodeau situation, playing his starters into the ground, and then you talk about DeBoer trying to light a fire by pulling what might be the most popular player and the most and one of the five best guys on the ice, right? I mean, it's for me it's hard to find a happy medium in there, in that you're trying to win a playoff game, you're trying to light a fire, all that stuff, but don't you want to play your best players at a point in time when your season is on the line?
I think there's a case to be made. He could have pulled him after 2 goals and played out the first period, and it's 3-1 after one period. So you've kind of held your ground. You haven't lost further ground from being 2-0, and then brought him back in. To Evan's point, that you want your best players on the ice at the end. And I think maybe that could have made a statement, and he could have tried that. But obviously, that's not what he did. He let him sit there. They didn't really lose because of Casey DeSmith. They lost because they can't score goals. Ottinger's popular. Ottinger's good. Ottinger also, Pete DeBoer's not wrong. He hasn't played well in any of the 3 conference finals. His numbers in all 3, against Edmonton twice and Vegas, save percentage below 900, goals up over 3. They're not the same as they are in the first 2 rounds. So I don't know what that means. I don't know what that signals. I don't know if he needs to play somebody else to play a little bit in the earlier rounds. I don't know if he's fatigued. I wouldn't think that would be the case. He's young and he's athletic, so that shouldn't be. But he hasn't really stood up in the big games. But yeah, when you take your best player off, one of your best players off the ice, and lose that way, like if you did that in basketball, or you took a starting pitcher out way too early or something like that, that would be seen as almost a fireable offense. And I think that's what we're getting into with the players being upset here. But I know I've spoken to the owner. He doesn't want to do it. And that's a very different thing. The owner, it's not the owner's call, it's the general manager's call. Um, Not used to that around here.
In some
So we
places, it
will,
doesn't matter who that is. Owner, general
yeah,
manager, doesn't make any difference.
It's
right.
funny, it's funny when I had a conversation with Tom Grieve for another podcast that won't be
Oh,
mentioned here,
okay.
just this week, and he talked about the hiring of Bobby Valentine, and that Mike Stone had come to him at that point in time, and so we're going back 40 years now, right? But Mike Stone had come to him and said, "This Eddie Childs is not making this hire. I'm not making this hire. You're the GM. We want you to make this hire." So it has
Yeah,
changed a little bit.
right. Yeah,
Well, I will say that it's my understanding that also that Ottinger might have led the league in minutes played by a goalie during the regular season. So, I mean, I guess there's some concern about how much he was playing Ottinger. Maybe he wore him out a little bit, and then he dumps on him at the end. I
yeah,
guess what we don't know is that what do the players want? Are the players saying, "Hey, we weren't really happy about this, and this wasn't good, but it's okay, we'll move on," or are they saying, "I can't play for this guy"? This is
yeah. I'd, I-
there's a
I'd be
there's a difference.
I'd be surprised if they're saying I can't play for this guy, being that they're hockey players and they're usually not that uh, vociferous in that kind of feeling. But I think they're upset. There were guys, I'm sure, that were unhappy about. DeBoer basically told them, don't retaliate for the hit that put Rupe Hintz out for a game. Don't retaliate when Hintz comes back and gets slashed again. He wants them to stay away from that stuff. This is not a physical team. But I think there's a real problem. You can play that way in the regular season, but if you're in the playoffs, playing the same team night after night, and you're letting somebody take cheap shots and in your mind, costing you one of your best players for a game, and maybe a couple games in terms of Rupe wasn't all the way back that first game. How do you not retaliate at all? What is the point of having Jamie Benn around if he's if he's not scoring and do anything else, if he can't go get a little retribution. And so I think there's some players mad about different things. It's just that the Ottinger is just the just leading the way.
Yeah. All
I
right. Well,
think well,
go ahead, Evan.
before we get out of here, I just think that like my take on all this is it's not whether or not players are mad or whether the mistake or whether the move was a bad tactical move, but I think we're talking and players shouldn't control the room. But Tim, to your point, there was a way to manage this, right? There was a good way to manage this, and maybe an inspiring way. You pull a goalie and you say, "We need you. We need you to get your head together. I'm going to put you back out there for the second period." And even if he says, "I don't think you have it tonight," Otter, and we're going to go with somebody else. You need to address that player immediately after the end of the series. Those are the two bad management elements of this that I think are real problematic. The strategy and all that other stuff, I think it can go either way, but you still have to manage personalities. And I'm not talking about players getting their feelings hurt. I'm talking about properly treating employees.
Very well said. He took a player who is under contract, a big contract, through 2033, and put him in a place where maybe right now he's feeling like he doesn't even want to be here, or at least doesn't want to be playing for this coach. I think your idea is a logical approach, kind of a level-headed approach to a in the middle of a game that was getting away from him. I think this was a purely emotional reaction, specifically that it's never really been explained because the questions haven't really he addressed it. He called timeout. He said whatever he said, yelled at the players. That takes 45 seconds to a minute. Oettinger skates back. He's all the way into the face-off circle before DeBoer is gesturing and telling him to get back over here. So did he not throw him out at the start of the timeout? Did he decide at the last second to throw him out? How is that? How is that decision made that it's unclear that the goalie who's coming in had to scramble to get past Ray Ferraro and said, "Excuse me, I got to go in. I got to go play some hockey." I
Excuse
mean,
me, game here. Got to get in there.
that suggests to me this was a very emotional Pete DeBoer who would have been much better off had he handled it the way Evan said, and instead is dealing with some fallout from the way he did it.
Yeah, the irony of all of this is that this is the guy, this is the coach who gets really prickly anytime you question anything about the players. That the players have talked about how well he's always defends them in the press conferences, and he goes to great lengths to say that no, this is not a problem. Then all of a sudden he says, "Oh yeah, well the guy's lost 6 of his last 7 games against us, so so what
He
the
the
heck?"
day
Well,
before in Edmonton, somebody had asked about Ottinger because they'd lost the game 6-1. Even there was I can't remember exactly how all the goals were scored, but he lost the game 6-1. And he said, as he always said, Jake Oettinger is the least of our problems. He consistently said Jake Oettinger is the least of their problems until the series was over. And then he pointed out Jake and Oettinger is their biggest problem they have right now.
yeah,
This
exactly.
this man has single-handedly lost 6 out of 7 games to the Edmonton Oilers while we're trying to beat them.
Yeah.
So it's Pete's a little all over the map, and yes, pesky Pete gets a little gets the hair standing up on his back when you ask him about certain things, as we
Let's
as we know.
let's move over and talk about Jason Robertson. Leah Simkopoulos for the Dallas Morning News wrote the other day that raised the question of whether the Stars should trade him because of salary cap concerns and how they're going to fit all this together and what they need to do and what they need to add. Jason Robertson has been a very good player for the Stars, a very good scorer for the Stars, and he's still young. He's what, 25, 26. How do you feel about that possibility, Tim?
That's an interesting one because he's a guy you would say yes. He over the last 4 years nobody has scored more points than Jason Robertson. I wouldn't put him in the top 5 most important players on the team. He'd probably be right outside that group. And it is funny. He did score a goal in each of the last 3 games. He kind of was the last star scoring as the season faded out. He wasn't really good at all in the playoffs until those 3 games. And his playoff performances haven't been up to his regular season. They have to do something creative. They have like roughly $5 million to spend, and they've got 6 forwards and a couple defensemen who are all unrestricted. So they're going to have a bunch of holes. So they have to take some salary from somebody and shove it onto another team to just try to, I wrote about signing Jamie Benn. They don't really even have the money. They'd have to give him all 5 million of it if to keep him around. So I don't know that I would trade Robertson, but I wouldn't be against it. It depends on how they see the team coming together. Mikko Rantanen is now their best player. He's their best scorer. He's going to be their biggest name for several years. And you still have Wyatt Johnston. You still have some other good young players. Um, they're going to have difficult decisions. So I think that article Leah wrote just points out nothing is going to be simple about trying to keep this team at the level it's been the last 3 years.
All right, one last thing on the way out here. Now, you mentioned
Sure.
Jamie Benn and bringing him back. You also wrote that you think it's time for him to give up the C and to put that on Mikko Rantanen, and that's based on the fact that just production, right?
Yeah, largely on production. Yeah, Jamie loved the column he wrote to me. He told me thanks for that. No, I'm kidding.
I
Um,
bet he did.
he if they want to keep him around, that's fine. And I don't want to diminish what Jamie Benn has been. He led the league in scoring 10 years ago, and he was still a decent scorer a few years back, but he's not now, and he was a fourth line player in the playoffs and a bad one. And so if you're keeping him around, it's hard to have that kind of player at the end of his career who's not playing important minutes, who's not on the first team power play, who's not first penalty kill. He's just a fourth line guy trying to hit a few guys and score occasionally. Be your captain. I don't think that's a natural fit. And I've never liked the fact that he doesn't believe the captain's role has anything to do with dealing with the press at all, and being the face of the team in tough times. He doesn't buy into that aspect that other captains do. So I think it would be a good time to go ahead and shelve that and move on to Mikko.
Kevin, make sure that when you write the notes outlining today's episode, make sure it starts with why Tim Cowlishaw hates Jamie Benn.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
clearly
Number
everything
one.
he stands for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't have a problem with anything that Tim said about that. That was the thing. You hear from everybody. That the players love him, right? Great guy. And that's an important thing, right?
Yes.
You want that from your captain, but and I know people will say it doesn't matter. How he deals with the media. It does matter because he's supposed to do it. Because if then he doesn't deal with it, then someone else has to deal with the media.
Right.
And
Real
that
quick.
leads.
Yeah. I try to explain this. This isn't about us needing quotes. This is about when things are tough and other players don't want to talk. You're the captain. You speak for the team. And whatever this tough situation might be, whatever this difficult thing is, you take it upon yourself to sort of lead the charge on that. And so others don't have to. He prefers to let others do the talking for him.
And especially when he was the center of attention a couple
Yes.
years ago with a playoff penalty and
Yes.
a
More than
ridiculous.
once.
Yes, and then so somebody else is having to talk about him getting
Right.
incurring this penalty, which is ridiculous.
I will say
Yes.
that I do think that that a current generation of players throughout sport does not fully grasp this concept, particularly in the 3 sports that play more than 80 games a year.
Yeah.
You do need somebody who is a spokesman, and not because I'm on deadline or somebody else is on deadline or somebody needs a soundbite, like Tim said, it is because when you don't answer the tough questions, you make other guys do it. And other guys aren't as accomplished and don't have the I don't know, what the wall of invincibility, so to speak, or the wall of
Right.
credibility that goes with it to say those things. And
What?
guys who are far less experienced, who are put into situations where you're having to explain why, for lack of a better term, why the Rangers offense doesn't score or why the Mavericks are dealing with something. And it is a difficult spot for young players to be in. And if you are in a role of leadership, particularly in hockey where somebody wears a C, I think it is
Yeah.
important that that person be, that spokesperson be part of the role.
Very much so.
All right, that's going to do it for our star segment of the podcast today.
Okay.
And
I'll join you more next time.
We're going to let Tim go now. Tim's got things to do. He's worn out from his segment on the Musers this morning as we're taping this.
Well,
My
clearly
God.
he's got to call Jamie Benn and make up with him.
He's having lunch with Jamie and Pete both, I think.
Yes.
It's going to be really nice. Tim's picking up the check. All right. Thanks, Tim. We'll see you.
See you guys.
You know, we didn't really get to talk about just things because we wanted to get Tim on. You know, Tim's very sensitive to his time and how much he gets to spend with us. And so we want to get him in and out. It's
very businesslike. He didn't care that I'd had a grouper sandwich yesterday.
Yeah. Now, let me just say before you go any further, the story about the grouper sandwich. Our old pal, Jerry Fraley, loved nothing better than a good grouper sandwich. And I personally had never had one. And when the lovely wife and I were in Naples recently, Naples, Florida, that is, she ordered a grouper sandwich and I had some of it. And I got to tell you, that's one of the, I don't know, 20 best things I've ever eaten in my life. It was
Wait a minute,
unbelievable.
you never had a grouper sandwich until 3 weeks ago?
No. Well, you don't get grouper anywhere except basically Florida, and I don't spend that much time in Florida. So you don't get a grouper sandwich anyplace else. Name me another place you get a grouper sandwich.
You've been to Florida before.
I know, but I've never ordered one. You know, I have a problem with the name grouper. If they'd been called, you know, like if it was a salmon sandwich or something like that, or if it was a, you know, grouper just sounds like.
Will you eat squash?
It's one vowel off of groper, you know, and I don't.
You eat squash.
I eat squash, yeah.
Who wants to eat something that's squashed?
Squash is okay. Grouper, as I was saying, is one vowel off of groper, and that's weird and creepy, and I don't want to eat that. So anyway, go on. You had a grouper sandwich there.
I did, by the Gulf yesterday. Well, you insert your geographic nomenclature however you prefer, depending on your political affiliation, but right by the Gulf. Actually, it was on Tampa Bay. Open air restaurant called Salt Shack on the Bay. It's one of my favorite finds over the last 5 years. Weather was beautiful. Sandwich was so moist and delicious.
Moist is a very controversial word too. You can't use that term.
Moist,
yeah. Very
why? Why? Stanley. Every place Stanley.
Have you not heard this whole
Italy,
thing?
He goes, "This is so moist."
Have you not heard the women complaining about that term? My youngest daughter hates the word moist. You can't use it.
I'm not going into that. I'm talking about a piece of fish that was blackened and served on a bun and was delicious. End of story.
Juicy. It was juicy.
It was juicy.
Yeah, that's good. You know, when they're really good like that, they are very. You know, I guess the thing about grouper, it's a little bit like sea bass, right? Similar in texture.
It's not quite as buttery, I don't think.
Yeah, oily.
It's a little bit not quite as buttery, and I would say the fillets are a little bit denser.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. But it leans that way more than it does toward like a swordfish or something like that.
No, it's not as dense as a swordfish or even a halibut, but it is. It's just a really nice summertime fish down here in Florida, and when you're eating it and looking at the water, it adds a little something to it.
I thought you were going to say, and when you're eating it and looking at the water, you forget all about the Rangers and how bad they are.
I've tried to spend about the last 3 minutes forgetting about the Rangers. My distraction techniques have not been too good. What would you like to talk about on the Rangers, Kev?
Well, it's starting to look like. No, I'm not saying it's starting to. The starting pitching has been very good, but look, we've already had one pitcher who they said, oh, he won't miss a start, and as soon as they said that, I thought, and I didn't even write that because it's like no, Nathan Eovaldi, of course, is out with that triceps tightness, and he's already missed a start, right? And we'll see how that goes from here. But I think this is also maybe kind of like a covert way of reducing his innings. Isn't that part of the story here, you think?
There's no doubt that there's a player maintenance and management element of this. And listen, I suspect that anytime any player, any pitcher has even the slightest, if they get a bee sting, maybe even a mosquito bite, they may put these guys on the IL if everybody else is healthy at the moment. And look, they've got Kumar Rocker, as we tape this, is about to make his return after 2 really strong rehab appearances, and it gives him six starters right now. And one way to manage a 6-man rotation is to disguise it as a 5-man rotation with somebody constantly spending 10 days or 2 weeks getting time off. And when you've got the number of 30-year-olds that the Rangers have in Jacob deGrom, Tyler Mahle, and Nathan Eovaldi, all who have had long histories with injuries. Mahle and deGrom in particular haven't thrown either one of them over 100 innings in multiple years. Add in that you've got a rookie who's pitching really well in Jack Leiter, who's on pace for 150 innings, which would blow away his previous professional, and that counts the minor leagues, high. And I do think that the Rangers need to do everything they can to manage the innings here. I think that's the one thing that they have to reckon with, is that the work has been great. The workload has been heavy. I don't think they've overworked these guys, but I do think it's important that, hey, right now you let off the gas a little bit, and you want those guys to maintain and be able to still finish strong.
So
So I agree with you. I thought the minute that Eovaldi left the game, there was no way he was not going to miss a start. The only caveat to any of that would have been Nate basically demanding not to go on the IL.
Yeah. So let's talk about Jack Leiter and his success and how well he's pitching now. Is there anything to the fact that he's apparently changed his glove and that he might have been tipping pitches before that?
I talked to Jack and Jacob deGrom about that a little bit yesterday and wrote a little note in there, and they both have gone to these no-back gloves that are really big, and they also don't allow kind of any peeking into the web. Both Jack and Jacob said, "Look, I don't know if it changes anything or how much guys are picking up tipping wise, but it does give you the peace of mind that you don't have to worry if guys are tipping, if you're tipping." And so, listen, it's all about, particularly with Jacob, is as much of an artist as Jacob deGrom is. I think he likes to boil it down to this: hit the glove, hit the glove, hit the glove. And they want to make it as simple as possible. Just the opposite of what the Rangers have done on the hitting side. They've made it far too complicated, I think, on too many occasions. The pitchers want to take as many thought processes out of their mind as possible so they can just dial in on their best pitch and their best location. And so if this does give them a psychological ability to say, I'm not worried about tipping anymore, for the time being, it's a good fix, and I think there is something to it. Now, the downside of all that, Kevin, right, is the other side of the pendulum. Do you get too lazy with grip? And if there's a runner on second base, are they able to start picking stuff up better? Blah 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 blah. But you address that when you come to it. Right now, Jack's pitching great, and listen, I have to say this again. He is a rookie, and he qualifies as a rookie this year. and he's pitching as well as any rookie in baseball right now. And listen, I thought the cool thing about my little note yesterday was, Jack has learned a lot from being around Nathan Eovaldi, and some of these veterans. And sometimes the veterans pick something up from the kid. So you saw Jacob go to a new glove. He said it was right out of the box. He said, "Thank God I didn't have a comebacker at me. I don't know that I would have been able to field it because it's a giant glove and it was brand new and not broken in. But I sure didn't have to worry about whether or not I was tipping any pitches."
Yeah, that's funny. All right, so let's flip that over to the other side here. What you were just talking about, the difference between the hitters and the pitchers,
Do we have to?
well, we have to, because here's what I want to ask you. Uh, uh, does it not seem clear now, especially with the benching of Adolis Garcia, who did get into the game Tuesday night, got a hit to right field, and then he lined out to first base. And so, those are good signs.
He should have been
Adolis
2 for 2. Yeah, he should have been 2 for 2. And the first hit was what really started a 2-out rally. Their one offensive rally of the night.
It's certainly a hitter strong enough to go to the opposite field. He can do damage across the board there. If that's what's going to help him to stay back on the ball a little bit and maybe not try to and of course Adolis has done that. He's gone the opposite way. He's not like Marcus Semien, who was almost exclusively a pull hitter, at least until this year when he's trying anything to get the ball in play. But the way Chris Young talked about all that was that, we're trying to get this message across to Adolis. But basically what you read into that is that he didn't do what he was supposed to do. He kind of did it, doesn't do it, goes back, regresses. And so we're sitting him down for a few days and say, look, you have to do this. And of course, now he's working on that. My question to you is, I can see how there's a player here, a player there that the message doesn't get through to. Is it possible that the message is not getting through to anybody? Does that explain the Rangers' hitting problems this year?
No, I mean, I think all these things are layered. And listen, I do want to start anything that we're talking about with Adolis in this situation by saying he's handled this exceptionally well. His buy-in publicly has been great. After not playing for a week, he went out last night and had 2 well-struck balls. And as we're taping this on Wednesday morning, he's going to play Wednesday night. Bruce Bochy made that clear after the game Wednesday. I think there's so many different layers of unpacking why an offense doesn't work these days anymore. But for me, if I'm landing on one thing, it is that I do think current hitters, I hate to sound like grumpy old man, but I feel like current hitters, and what we're seeing is that current hitters are so focused on getting off their best swing that sometimes they've lost track of what it means to take team at bats. We saw this with the Cardinals all throughout the weekend, even though the Rangers won 2 out of 3. I thought the Cardinals did a good job of optimizing run scoring opportunities, and I don't think the Rangers have done that well this year. I do think this is a real topic for Brett Boone that he has brought to the club, and we did see some of that, particularly on Sunday, where the Rangers did what was asked of them to do in games. In particular, I think by Marcus Semien. And I will also say on Semien, it does look like he's tried to go to right field more. I think the thought process there with his swing is think to go right field, but that will allow you to get out in front of the ball and actually pull it. And if you don't, you've got a shot to get a hit the other way. So I think that's the thought process there. But I don't want to say the message isn't getting through. I just think that we've gotten to an inflection point in baseball where we've had this whole wave of years of it's all about the launch angle and the exit velocity and this and that. And sometimes it's about what's going on the bases. What's the situation? Where's the base runner? What do we need to do to make sure that run scores?
I agree with all that, Evan. The issue is that other teams are doing it. The Rangers are at the bottom of the league in almost every offensive category. So everybody else apparently is adjusting and doing the things necessary to have a productive offense, and the Rangers aren't.
They have been slow in that regard. There's no doubt. They have been slow in that regard.
So to me, it just suggests that they are, either they are resisting or they are just, I don't want to call them dumb guys. They're not dumb guys, but it doesn't feel good. When you look, as we know, Shin Soo Choo was a really great took really great at bats, right? And everybody used to think that it was, he just takes a lot of pitches. He did not take a lot of pitches. If the first pitch was right down the pipe, he was swinging at it, you know. But he was going to swing at his pitch, and he was going to get the pitch that he wanted. And I think so many times it's like I've noticed that with Josh Smith when he was batting leadoff. It's like, hey man, your job is kind of, and that was also one of my issues with Marcus Semien. Your job as a leadoff hitter is to try to take a few pitches here if you can, and they're just simply not doing it. I just don't know that people see that they have a role, that it's a team concept. We used to hear that all the time, passing the baton down to the next guy, right? And it seems like no one wants to pass the baton. It's like, I'm going to do this all by myself.
I think, to go back to your point, right? Like, what did we hear all spring training? Okay, let's start with the miscalculations, right? The miscalculation all spring training was that this team was going to slug. And,
I'm about to put that in my regrets again.
Right? Yeah. So they didn't slug out of the gate. And that led to a coaching change. And with a coaching change, there's always going to be a period of adjustment. And so now all of a sudden, you're kind of 6 weeks behind the curve on everybody else, and it's going to take time to make all this stuff up. But to your point, look, I kind of made this point last week in something I wrote. Josh Smith has been invaluable to this team, and he's been a really good offensive player for the last 2 years. But I do think one of his weaknesses has been when he's been asked to hit at the top of the order. I think he's been a little bit too impatient, and his numbers in the one spot and a couple of times he's hit two, I think reflect that. I also think that, the potential solution there right now would be, you just got Evan Carter back from the IL. Are you going to put him up there? I think, look, he had a year last year, even though he was hurt, where he didn't perform. Need to see some performance out of him. Do you put Alejandro Osuna up there a week after he gets called up to the big leagues? And I don't know that I'd be against that, because Alejandro Osuna has done nothing but take professional at bats since he's been up here. Is it a lot of pressure to put on a young guy? Maybe, but I do think that if you're looking to fill out roles on this team that are more prototypical of what traditional baseball has been, Osuna kind of fits that role at the top better than maybe anybody else right now, at least until Carter gets rolling.
I agree with that. Look, to me, the thing with, and all your points are absolutely the truth about, you don't want to do damage to people, but it appears to me that Osuna is not the kind of guy you'd hurt mentally. I mean, he may not, if you put him in the leadoff role, he may not flourish in it, but it's not going to ruin him either. He seems to me a guy who really does understand, what this is, and that's why he's been able to play so well, is that he realized, hey man, it's just baseball. It's just a game that I love to play, I'm good at, and I'm just going to play this and not be worried about all this stuff and make too much out of everything. That's been the most impressive thing, right? Is the streak of, and I didn't check the box last night. Did he get on base last night?
He did not. He took a called third strike that he was not happy with, and then he only had 2 at bats because Garcia hit for him late in the game. Once they brought in a left-handed pitcher, so his stretch of reaching in the first 6 games he played ended. But I haven't gone back and looked at the location. I was having some wireless issues with my game day app yesterday. I haven't gone back and looked at the exact location of the pitch he was called out on.
Speaking of all this, and this will bleed over probably into our next segment, but the whole thing about the ABS system and challenge system and all the rest of that kind of stuff. And I saw a stat that either Sean or you had the other day about the number of pitches that were missed against the Rangers this year. And it was, what was it in the neighborhood of? Was it?
They were in the middle 100? Of the pack. They've been in the middle of the pack all year.
Yeah. But give me the number. What was the number? Is it like 100?
That was in Sean's thing, his 5 things. This is a great addition to our coverage, and I don't have the number off the top of my head.
But whatever it is, it's like anybody who's objecting to the use of robot umpires, and you see this is how many pitches that human umpires are missing in games. That's outrageous. When Ken Rosenthal wrote for the Athletic recently and talked about, that it turns out that this, uh, this uh, the ABS system may not be infallible, that there was like 2% of the time that it's wrong. It's like 2% of the time that it's wrong. How much of the time you think the human umpires are wrong? 15%, 20% of the time? That's
And
just
I don't know if you
outrageous to
saw
make that
this
argument.
over the weekend. Tampa Bay's Taylor Walls was ejected for arguing a call
Yes.
third strike because the umpire behind the plate, I believe it was Andy Fletcher, thought that he had tapped his head, I guess mimicking the ABS replay signal. And listen, I got to tell you something. Even if he did that, that to me is bad management of the game by the umpire, because there is nothing about touching your head. There is nothing offensive. He's not showing him up or anything like that. I have a real issue with the idea that's going to lead to a guy getting thrown out of the game. Um,
Well,
I'm
especially when you see
all
the
in on
shock and
ABS at this point in time.
especially when you see the shock on his face. I mean, he was settling in. He had his head down. Yes, he did tap, but he had been adjusting it on his head, and just a quick tap, and then all of a sudden he looks up. It's like, what in the world's happening here?
The only people who would have thought that was a tap were Taylor Walls if he was doing it, and the umpire who's watching too flipping closely what the guy's doing with his helmet.
Oh yeah, no question about it. No question about it. I got to tell you, I'm down on officiating in general, because we are moving into an age when everything can be digitized, and we can figure stuff out, and it's just like you can't watch a golf tournament now without when the guy strikes the ball, there's the ball tracker, and then it shows you the flight of the ball in the path. And that's a wonderful addition to golf coverage. There are just too many things that can be done now to eliminate situations which is, I think I mentioned last week's podcast, there was a little mashup someone had done of plays involving Luka Doncic just since he's gone to the Lakers, in which referees have clearly just ignored the fouls. And one of them, when a guy pushed him with two hands to his back, Luka goes spilling across the floor, and there was a referee standing right there next to the play. No whistle, no nothing. And clearly, that's just one of those, Luka complains all the time. He can take that. He can have that.
Can I get golf balls that have the ball tracker?
Yeah, I think you can. I think you could have those kind that explode on contact. That would be better off for your game. Those would be better. Yeah, that's going to do it for we're going to say that was the Rangers / baseball / ABS segment of the podcast. We're going to move over now to our potpourri. And speaking of golf, Scottie Scheffler won another tournament. He won the Memorial, Jack Nicklaus's tournament, in which the most notable thing about all of that was that, Nicklaus said that, yes, he reminds me of me. So, which is a pretty big compliment for Scottie Scheffler to be that Nicklaus is saying that, yeah, you look like me, meaning that he hits all the fairways, he hits all the greens, he stays out of trouble, he's very thoughtful, everything he's done has a purpose, and he's terrific. Number two thing that Nicklaus said after that tournament was that Scottie Scheffler knows that these guys out here have no business competing against him, and that all the best players that would be his prime competition outside of Rory McIlroy probably are on the LIV tour. So that was very interesting that came up. But right now, Scottie is really rolling. He's won the Memorial back-to-back now. He's won multiple tournaments this year. So it has been a big year for Scottie Scheffler, and will continue to be that.
I saw some stats. Actually, it was a stat via a meme about Scottie Scheffler's last 9 months or so, in which it just ran down a number of golfers that he's outperformed for a number of significant golfers he had outperformed for their entire career just in the last 6 or 9 months. It's pretty ridiculous.
I'm sure it is. Yeah, that especially when you see that. Yeah, because these are guys that you, especially guys from the 70s, 80s, 90s. These people who played forever. You know all these names, and they play for 20 years, and they have 10 or 12 tournament wins, and that's a lot. And that's a good career. You win 10 tournaments, that's a good career, and he's already surpassed all of that. So yeah, he's on his way. No question about it. He's already there, and he's just going to continue to roll. Would be my guess. Um, Also in golf news recently, the CJ Cup, Byron Nelson Golf Classic at Craig Ranch, whatever 16-word title we want to put on that now, is signed up there at Craig Ranch through 2030. I think it's a little shorter than what I was told when we were out there for the Nelson, but still good news for that. And Lanny Watkins, even as we are speaking now, they've already started on the remake. He's going to take out a few sand traps and resculpt a few of the greens and make it tougher. It's not difficult enough as it is, and so that'll be
So
good.
I think they should just make it easier because let's just set a scoring record there. I mean,
Yeah, get
it's a
it. Somebody can
vanilla.
go like
It's
a
become such a vanilla tournament now, on the tour. Let's make it famous for where somebody can go 50 under.
pitch putt. Yeah, so somebody can shoot a 56. That'd be great. Yeah, I'm all for it. That's good. Let's go. And we'd still shoot 100, but that's okay. All right, and then see what else is happening here. Well, we're making progress here, I guess, if you want to call it that, in towards the what will be the college football playoff after this year. This year is the last year of the 12-team format. They have gone now with the straight seeding, and so you won't have the conference champions getting the top 4 seeds, which was really not good. That wasn't good. It wasn't a good idea. And that this whole idea, and my friend Bob Bowlesby, one of the architects of all this, believes that you should reward those conference champions. That's a hard thing to do. And the the one of the new formats they're talking about and discussing as they go to 16 teams, which almost certainly will happen now, beginning in 2026, is the 5+11 model, where it's the 5 conference champions plus the 4 power conferences, and then the one from the group of 5, plus 11 at large. There's been a lot of controversy about all that, about who wants what. What are the SEC and the Big Ten really want? Guarantees, automatic qualifiers, which they get 4 apiece. The ACC and the Big 12 will get 2 apiece, and then 1 for the conference, the group of 5, and then 3 at large bids, which it's like a calculus formula. Or if you go the 5+11, as it turns out, you would think that the Big 12 and the ACC would be for that model that at least guarantees them 2 berths apiece. As it turns out, they're not for that. And there's been a lot of discussion about that. And the coaches are not for that. The coaches across the board, all conferences, are wanting this 5+11 model. And I have to think that's because they believe that things move in cycles, and that eventually there will be a time, or at least there will be a year, when either the SEC or the Big Ten doesn't deserve 4 automatic qualifiers, and they should. That leaves more for everybody else, and I don't disagree with that. I think that's a good plan, frankly. We saw last year what happened at Alabama. As soon as Nick Saban left, Kalen DeBoer took over, and they didn't even make the tournament, which is all part of the problem with the SEC and Greg Sankey. He's still furious about that and wanting to know what it is that the committee has been considering, the criteria. I listened to a couple of podcasts by Joel Klatt, in which the analyst, college sports analyst, saying that it's just awful, this 5+11 model, because that leaves it in the hands of the committee. So Evan, let me ask you this: do you have a problem with the committee deciding these things if it's in a model where you got 5 conference champs and 11 at large, meaning that you're not automatically taking 4 each from the Big Ten and the SEC, the two best football conferences in the nation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm too much of an idealist. If you wanted to go the 5 conference champions get automatic berths and whatever preferred seating, I'm fine with that. But I just think that the 11 teams after that should be based on the best teams. And that doesn't necessarily mean that any conference is guaranteed a specific allotment of playoff teams. Um, that's just not how the real world works. And as much as I am an SEC snob, I I also know that, to your point, there are years and there will be cycles, full cycles, where the SEC is not necessarily the dominant conference. Um, but the whole point of this, from a competition level, is that we should be seeking the best teams and rewarding the best performances. And while I think most years the SEC or the Big Ten are going to get a lion's share of those bids, I don't think that they should be guaranteed them. I just don't. I also love the upstart. I love looking at the super regionals in baseball this week and seeing that UTSA knocked out Texas and they're going to be playing. That Coastal Carolina knocked out Florida and Coastal Carolina is going to host. I like upstart stories, and I do think that there should be an opportunity for a couple of schools that have overperformed to go out there and prove themselves. It's also an opportunity to make your program.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's more difficult in football than it is in the other sports because the other sports are a little more fluky. And baseball is just a good day. You got your pitcher's having a really good day, and you're going to beat this other team. Basketball is something the same way. Sometimes shots just don't fall. In football, it is harder if you don't have the manpower, to beat this other team. If you're just going to get whipped at the line of scrimmage, which is a pretty consistent thing, right? If you got the advantage, and that's why those people are so valuable, is that if you have that advantage up there, well, then you're simply just not going to win those games. So I don't like it to be trumped up. And to give you an example of how I feel about that, I do prefer the 5+11 model. And in that one, when I picked my 16 team, if we're going to be a 16 team field this year, that's what I picked, even though there's not going to be, I came up with 6 SEC teams, 6. So I don't know why the SEC would complain about that. It's the whole idea of the guarantees, and then everybody's mad about saying what's good for the good of the game or not for the good of the game, and so forth. And I understand why all this is going on. There's real concerns in college athletics about where are we going to get the money to do all this stuff. If we're going to be, everybody's paying. Well, not everybody's going to, but you can pay up to $20 million. That comes from somewhere. That's a lot of money to ask people to come up with every year. I heard horror stories last night at a function I was at from some people heavily connected in college athletics in general about how much everything is costing now and what it costs to keep even a commitment from a kid. It's just phenomenal what this is all led to. And of course, it's hard to feel sorry for them. They brought this all upon themselves. If they had made some concessions earlier, maybe they could have come to something more reasonable now. But now, it's all the cows out of the barn now. There's no stopping anything. And I don't know if there's any policing of it, anything anybody can do going forward either. It doesn't mean that it still won't be fun. I thought people complained about the tournament last year and talked about the fact that some of them were lopsided. It's like, well, yeah, eventually you're going to have that, but there were also some great games too. And I just thought that it's fun, to your point, to get some of these teams in the tournament, right? And to see somebody else other than SEC or Big Ten team. I don't have any problem with them getting in. It's fun to get these other people so they can at least, until they get their heads knocked off, at least that was fun up to that point.
And listen, let's just be very clear here. You can rank from 1 to 16 however you want, but I'm going to tell you what we saw with some lopsided early games in the CFP last year was, instead of a 14 playoff, you had a 12-team playoff. And there is a greater discrepancy from 4 to 12 than there is from 1 to 4. And because of that, you saw some lopsided games. And so if you go to 16 teams, Kevin, you're going to see some lopsided games in early rounds. That's just how it's going to be.
Well, not only that, I went when that was all raging. I went back and looked at the scores from when it was 14, when it was 2 teams. There's blowouts when it was the BCS and it was 2 teams. People were beating people by 30 points. They're beating them by 30 points when there was 4 teams. You can't say and take one small sample size
Right.
like that and say, "Oh, see, this doesn't work. It's no good."
I think
It's
the
clearly not.
narrative, I think the issue with the narrative this year was, right, this was the first year of the 12-team playoff, and it followed after an incredibly fun regular season, um, which was full of really dramatic and exciting games. And so I think in that regard, these first round playoff games were a little bit of a letdown. But that's more narrative than anything else. I don't think that it was a bad playoff by any stretch. And I do think, though, that, by and large, if you've got the one team playing the 16 team, and I know that's not how the 16 team bracket would work, you're going to have some lopsided early games more often than not, but you will have an upset here or there, or you will have a dramatic game here or there.
Well, and to your point about the regular season, what happened there was obviously that the SEC wasn't as dominant. Alabama lost 3 games. Got smoked by Oklahoma. The whole argument about Alabama not getting in and then just getting smoked at the end of their schedule like that. I just don't know how you can make that argument. And what it feels like to me is that Greg Sankey realizes that maybe we're starting to see some parity in college football now because of the NIL and the portal, and we're trying to protect ourselves. And I think that's probably also part of the 5+11 model, is that we don't know where college football is going.
Right.
We don't know how it's going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever. Let's not legislate anything into this that's going to give somebody a long-term advantage who doesn't deserve it.
You know what the other takeaway from all this is if you're thinking of hiring a coach, don't go with the last name DeBoer.
I thought about that yesterday when I was typing Kalen DeBoer's name, and I thought, I don't know why I'd never even thought about the fact that they both had. Surely they're related. Maybe we should ask Pete DeBoer that. Is Kalen a cousin?
And is that why both of you guys can't seem to win the playoffs?
Yeah, that might be it. All right, that's going to do it for our podcast this week. We thank you for settling in
Hey,
with us.
Kevin, can I just say one thing that's not going to matter to anybody but me?
Go ahead. That's what pretty much you always do.
But before we get out of here, look, sports writing is in a tumultuous state, and I think that we're very fortunate to have been part of SportsDay for a long time and go back to a really rich tradition. I, as you know, grew up working at the Atlanta Journal and Constitution, which at one point in time was on par with the Dallas Morning News. And one of my heroes passed away this week, Jack Wilkinson, who had dealt with Alzheimer's disease in recent years, but was a giant of a profile writer, always had fun, was an enormous personality. And the sports writing profession in the world is a little bit less of a place today with Jack gone. My thoughts go out to his family, and it just does remind me that this is a brotherhood and sisterhood of writers and people who are really enormously talented. And there are so many people I've learned from, and before you became my hero, kind of Jack and Tom Stinson were. And I'm just sorry to see Jack go, but I'm hoping he's out of pain.
That's very, very sweet and nice. Yes, I had seen that he had passed. I didn't know Jack, but I knew of him, obviously. And Mark Wicker had, or not Mark Wicker, it was Charlie Pierce had written on Facebook about his passing, and I did not know that. Yeah, it is hard to see these people go, isn't it? In our business, people don't always notice the writers. I have loved this brotherhood that we are and sisterhood that we are a part of. It is people don't always get what we do. I think that so many times readers, they're appreciative, but they don't understand what our job is. And our job is to, if we're doing it right, we're just trying to tell you the truth. We may not get to the truth, but it's not because we're not trying. And we're trying to do it in a way that informs you, entertains you, makes you laugh, makes you cry, whatever. But that's our only goal. I know of no one else I've ever respected in this business who that was not their goal. And so when you're around people like us, that's just a given, and we all understand it. And it's nice to be in that room with those people who understand what we're doing and don't have to argue about it, and don't have to say that no, that's not what you meant to say, or what you meant to write, or what you meant to convey. And so when they're gone, that is a tough thing. So thanks for that, Evan. All right, so that's going to do it from us, and we appreciate it, and we will, from everybody in here to everybody out there, thanks, and we'll see you next time.